Hey YouTube, Dozer here, bringing you another Flesh and Blood video, except this time we're not going to be talking about gameplay or the meta, we're going to be talking about the market. Now, before you get all up in arms, before you go crazy, this is all very preliminary. I literally got the data organized today, and it is still a far ways off from being conclusive or from being done. But as someone who's studying markets and data analytics in my education, I've had a lot of time to develop some skills, and I'm still developing skills to help answer questions like the ones we ask every day about the Flesh and Blood market. Is this card overpriced? Should I be buying this now while it's at this price? How much does the price get affected by bans, by reprints, by new sets coming out? All these questions and more are things that we're gonna be able to answer before too long here. So what I've got here is historic data for Flesh and Blood on TCG Player that goes back about 1.5 to 2 years. And basically, it allows us to look at the names of the cards, the set they're printed in, the price that they are for every version, as well as a couple of things that I'm adding on here and there. And there's gonna be a lot more coming, let me tell you. Basically, thanks to Card Tech, by the way, for having their own JSON format files for Flesh and Blood cards to be able to map on information like card text, artists, band dates. All these different things are going to be very useful to map onto this. So a big shout out to them. At the same time, we have a lot of work ahead of us in order to actually make sense of all this data. So right now we've got, I don't know, about 1.4 million observations, which basically means that for every day, for every card, we have the price data. And it could blow up even more if we start separating them based on, like, maybe we have the cold foil is a separate entry from the rainbow foil for a fabled or something. And so that's going to increase the data even more. And you can't do this in Excel, by the way, because Excel only lets you go up to about 1 million or so observations. We're going to be having a lot more than that over time. But the point is, what's really cool is that even so, we've got all this price data to be able to say, hey, based on the rarity of the card, based on the set it was printed in, based on the release date of that set, based on the meta viability of the card, based on class, talent, generic, you name it, we're gonna have a million different angles to look at this data through and start making sense of what's really going on in the secondary market as it comes to Flesh and Blood. So right now, again, I've just got the data today. It was a miracle to get it to work through getting the data organized and converting all the files into a bigger single file that I can use to actually do regressions on. And so I wanted to share with you guys today that I am working on this and that this is a big thing that's taking up my time outside of my classes and duties and responsibilities. So I will be hoping that when Outsiders comes out, that Ranger will be really fun, because I'd love to come in and play some more Ranger while we wait for the next Illusionist to come out. But in the meantime, this is what it's going to be going on in the background to be able to try and eventually get some real results to you guys. But in the meantime, let's take a look at the regression output. So this is all very preliminary. As I said, this is literally day one, hour 3 type of analysis here, but it is interesting to see it nonetheless. So what we can see at the beginning here is we are looking at the minimum price, the natural log of minimum price. All the natural log is doing here is smoothing out our values of price. So a lot of the time, if you've got big outliers in data, those can really drive your results. And so by taking the natural log of price data, we're better able normally to see the a more continuous trend between things. So that's why we've taken the natural log here instead of just using raw price data. At the same time, we've got our couple control group variables here. So starting off, we've got age. Age here is simply the release date difference between today and the release date. So, let's say WTR Unlimited came out in some month and some day, in some year. We compare that to every single day in the market, and we create a difference and a measure of saying, hey, at this day, how old was this card? And we can do that for every card. And so we can see how much does age have an effect on the price of the card. As well, we have the rarities, Fabled, Legendary, Majestic, Rare, Common, Token, which are simply called dummy variables because they are either a 0 or a 1. They are on if they are true and they are off if they are false. So in this case, this is just a really easy way to say, hey, what rarity is this card? Because there's no real way to directly compare them yet. I'm working on that, but at the moment, it's just, hey, if you have a Fabled, how much does that affect your price of your card? Things like that. And so let's just analyze the regression output here and start doing a little bit of speculation. Right now we can see that the R squared is going to be 0.68. That's actually really high. R squareds like this, it could be an issue that it's this high essentially, but based on the fact that in the regression here, I've got the natural log of min price regressed upon age, rarity, and we're absorbing the fixed effects of date. So basically time fixed effect. So basically what that means is there's variation in the card prices over time. Like let's say there's a market-wide trend that goes down or market-wide trend that goes up. What this is aiming to do is to capture that average change over time so that we're not looking at like big peaks and valleys. We're saying, hey, what are the relative differences between all of the cards over time? And that's what we're doing there. Then this VCE statement cluster is talking about we are clustering standard errors based on the set. So a big thing that you have to do when you do regressions, and again, this is by no means conclusive or final, but when you do regressions like this, you can run into problems where the results are being overly biased. And so what we're trying to do here by clustering by set is saying that, hey, these cards came out around the same time. They're all related to each other, right? You know, Dromai's cards related to Dromai's cards, Bolton's cards related to Bolton's cards. So we're probably going to see a lot of co-movement along all of those cards. And so what we want to try and do is eliminate as much of that as possible. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cluster the standard errors around set to say, hey, each of these sets are going to be really close together. Let's try and isolate out those differences so that we're looking more across the whole pool over time rather than the specific set. In this case, there are times we might want to do something different, but for now, that's what we're going to try to do here. And so, yeah, what we can see in the table here is we see that as age goes up by about 1%, you're going to expect to see about a 10 basis point increase in the value of your card, aka a tenth of a percent, which isn't a ton. But when you think about the fact that the cards get really old really quick as far as days, because this is measured in days effectively, every day that your card gets older, it goes up a little bit in value, which makes sense. Like we totally expect that to happen, but that's true even for the lowest rarity of the card. At the same time, and we can see here that it's statistically significant at the T-stat of 2.32. Basically, this just tells us that, hey, we're really, really sure that this difference is not random. It's basically what it's doing. Or that we're really sure that it's not zero, that the effect is actually tangible and relevant. We also can see here that for Fabled, Legendary, and all these guys, most of them are significant. We can see that Fabled with a T-stat of 8.3, we're expecting to see a 5 times increase in the card's value, 500% increase in the card's value when you have, like, as the card gets older and older. So that's off of the base value. So this constant here is going to be the intercept. That's going to be the base value of every card. And then from there, based on what it has or what it doesn't have, it's going to be impacted by the rest of these things. So again, the regression is not perfect, but we can see here that if you're a token, you're going to be worth a lot less, common worth a lot less, rare worth a lot less. And all of these are statistically significant. Basically, we're looking for 1% confidence interval, where in this case, we're far above that. So we have a very, very strong case saying, hey, we're really sure that this is being driven by age and by rarity. And then we also have, interestingly enough, Majestic here is very, very low probability of mattering. So the Majestic rarity doesn't seem to really push the minimum price of a card very much because it's just, there's probably a whole bunch of reasons for this, but my main thought is just that a lot of Majestics are kind of less good than other ones, and they're not really that demanded in the meta, and they tend to be really niche. Another thing that's maybe not accounted for here in the common and rare slot is that I haven't separated the names out by color yet, so we can't really look at the differences in pitch. I'm sure that we'd see reds and blues being a lot better than yellows, for instance, except for maybe Prism and stuff. But basically, right off the bat, everything in this regression is statistically significant at the start, except for the status of being a Majestic or not. Everything else is great. which is crazy to think about as a preliminary result, right? Basically, legendaries and fables are worth more, rares, commons, tokens worth less. We know that, but the data backs it up. And we can start to quantify by how much on average that's true. And we can be more specific or less specific depending on what question we want to answer. We can also go down here and look at the maximum price. So the natural log of the maximum price is also going to do the same thing as far as smoothing out our output, but we're also going to be able to really ensure that we are looking at the collectability more so than the playability, because we'd assume that players just want the most available version of the card, the cheapest version to play with. And so that's going to be more towards that minimum price. But for the maximum price, we're actually more concerned with the collectors, people that are trying to invest long-term in the value of their cards. And that's going to be more captured here. And so what we can see here is that there's still a similar effect where age is a big factor in the amount of value that's carried over your cards. So over again, every day, your cards are getting more and more valuable to the tune of about 3 times more so than a base version, which is kind of interesting to think about. There's like this basic trend here. We can also see that fables and legendaries are a bit less of a multiplier here because, and you can think about that being simply that legendaries and fables are already kind of rare, and especially now with Uprising, and again, I have to do a lot more data cleaning to make sure this is accurate, but effectively, a lot of fables aren't worth that much, and the cold foils are basically only collector's pieces, and they're kind of driven also in part by their playability. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the reason that the fables and legendaries having less of a premium for cold foil status is just because the compared to other high rarity cards is just the fact that they are, I don't know, there's probably like a whole bunch of reasons, who knows, right? I'm not going to try and guess, I give up. But what we can say over here is that Majestic is still not showing up as significant with a T-stat of only 0.92. It's not even close to significant, which means that we cannot say for sure if this is even like a true effect of it having anything, like any sort of effect on the price. So that's interesting, right? The fact that Majestics on average don't seem to really matter as far as their rarity is concerned on their price. Which makes sense, right? Because a lot of Majestics actually are rare, but kind of suck. So you're not really incentivized to play them. You're not really incentivized to collect them. And so you don't really buy them. Whereas a card like CNC, a card like 3 of a Kind, a card like Rain Razors, a card like E-Strike, right? All these are really great Majestics that are just powerful cards. And we haven't really dug into all the different elements of a card, like its power, its pitch, its value, like its expected value, that kind of thing. So once we get that into this data set, we'll be able to start looking at that. But just as purely looking at the age and rarity of the card, we can start to already see the trends that we are looking for. So yeah, just want to give you guys a brief update on what I've been up to, a little peek in what's to come. And then again, hopefully with Outsiders here, Ranger's going to get some love and we're going to get to have some real good fun, brewing up some decks, doing some gameplay, and coming back in form and in force while we wait for the next Light Illusionist to come out this year. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time. In the meantime, take care and have a good day. Peace.